Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. According to The Bold and the Beautiful, BNB, spoilers for Thursday, October 2nd, Hope Logan, Annika Noel, will not marry Carter Walton Lawrence St. Victor as soon as possible. Hope will instead join Liam Spencer, Scott Clifton, and Beth Spencer, Jordan Gracie for their dance. So here's what BNB fans should expect. Carter just informed Hope that he had subdued Ridge Forrester, Torsten K., and persuaded him to reinstate her line. That was great news for Hope, but it made the decision even more difficult. Hope is undoubtedly feeling thankful to Carter, who is anxious to make their eternal commitment official. Carter doesn't want to wait any longer to become husband and wife, so he eagerly pushed Hope to marry him today. Hope's anxious demeanor and her earlier talk with Brooke Logan Forrester, Catherine Kelly Lang, make it clear that she is not yet ready to take this leap with Carter. Fortunately, Hope has an excellent reason to get out of the quick wedding. Hope may bring up Beth's request to return to Brooke's apartment for the daddy-daughter dance with Carter. Carter will encourage Hope to spend time with Liam and Beth in order to support her family and demonstrate that he does not feel threatened. Carter may advise that they simply reschedule the wedding for tomorrow or whenever they can, as long as it is soon. Next, Beth will put on her gorgeous gown and new jewelry, while Liam also gets dressed up. When the sun goes down, Beth will be able to indulge in all of the adorable daddy-daughter dance she desires. Hope will return and partake in the festivities, which will make Beth very happy. The same goes for Liam, who refuses to give up hope for his future with Hope. In Thursday's BNB episode, Daphne Rose, Muriel Hilaire, will be thinking about Carter and his amazing attributes. Despite Carter's engagement to Hope, Daphne will remain immensely attracted to him, and the program may eventually employ her as his backup love interest. Until then, Brooke will open up to Ridge and may explain that Hope is feeling drawn back in Liam's direction. It could lead to Brooke dropping indications that Hope and Carter's wedding isn't happening after all. According to The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers, Ridge may get concerned about Carter's heart in the end, so we'll keep you updated on the impending disaster. Hope stood on the edge of the dance floor, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress as the music played around her. The Carter wedding was in full flow, with a kaleidoscope of laughter, clinking glasses, and spinning couples beneath the warm glow of string lights. She should have been out there, whirling in the arms of someone who made her pulse race, but instead she remained glued to the spot, her chest tight with an unknown sadness. Liam and Beth were the focal point of the party, with their first dance as newlyweds catching every attention in the room. Hope saw her best friend and brother move in perfect harmony, their grins brilliant, and their love a physical force that seemed to light up the entire venue. She wanted to be happy for them, and a part of her did, but it was hidden beneath a thick, unshakable melancholy. She had missed the ceremony altogether, unable to face the vows, rings, and pledges of forever. It wasn't just about Liam and Beth, though their happiness bothered her in ways she couldn't describe. It was about all she had lost, everything she had never had the opportunity to keep. The wedding invitation had arrived months ago, embossed with gorgeous gold letters, and she had stared at it for days, pondering whether or not to RSVP. She had almost declined, but Liam had called, his voice warm and teasing, urging she couldn't miss his special day. "Your family, Hope," he'd said, and she felt guilty for even thinking about leaving. So here she was, standing on the sidelines, attempting to blend into the reception hall's shadows. The music changed to a softer, haunting melody that wrapped about her like a cool breeze. Hope's gaze shifted to the other couples joining Liam and Beth on the dance floor. There was her cousin Anna, giggling as her husband clumsily spun her, and old Mr. Carter, swaying softly with his wife of 40 years, their hands trembling but gripped securely. She saw love everywhere she looked, messy, imperfect, but real. Nonetheless, Hope felt as if she had never learned to speak the language. She hadn't always behaved this way. Hope once believed in love, dreaming of her own wedding and dancing under the sky. When she met Daniel, she was 22 years old and had just graduated college. He was a musician with wild hair and fast smiles, and his voice could make her forget everything. They had met at a coffee shop, where he was performing an acoustic set, his fingers dancing over the guitar strings while singing about heartbreak and optimism. She was captivated, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. They'd spent the summer tangled up with each other, stealing kisses in the rain and talking about their dreams till morning. Daniel had promised her forever, and she had believed him. She had believed in the way he gazed at her, as if she were the only thing important. But forever slipped through her fingers. Daniel's band got a break, an opportunity to travel across the country, and he invited her to join him. She'd wanted to more than anything, but she had a job offer, a concrete step toward a future she'd fought hard for. They'd battled about it, not with loud voices, but with quiet, biting words, each one cutting harder than the previous. In the end, he went without her, promising to call, visit, and make things work. The calls came at first, then became intermittent, and eventually ceased entirely. Hope's heart had already begun to shatter when she learned he'd moved to Los Angeles with someone else. She attempted to move on. There were other men and dates, but none of them compared to Daniel. None of them made her feel like she was simultaneously flying and falling. She pushed herself into her profession, friendships, and anything that could fill the void he had left behind. But loneliness crept in gradually and insidiously until it became a permanent companion. She'd look at couples like Liam and Beth, or even strangers on the street, and wonder what she was missing, what flaw in her kept love just out of grasp. The wedding was not the first time she had felt this way, but it was the most intense. Seeing her older brother, Liam, so happy with Beth, her best friend since high school, was a bittersweet experience. They had always been tight, the three of them, exchanging late-night conversations and inside jokes. Beth had been there throughout the Daniel years, holding Hope's hand when the breakup occurred and promising her she'd meet someone better. And Liam, Daniel's protective older brother, had threatened to follow him down when he stopped phoning. Watching them dance, Hope felt as if she was losing them both, not to each other, but to a life she could not touch. They were creating something together, a future full of shared dreams and promises, while she remained outside, looking in. She turned away from the dance floor, her throat tight, and slipped out into the patio. The night air was cold, with a perfume of jasmine and freshly cut grass. The stars were out, scattered over the sky like spilled jewels, and she took a moment to breathe. She didn't cry, she hadn't in years, but the weight in her chest caused her knees to buckle. She slid onto a bench, her clothing pooling about her, and stared at the ground, attempting to settle herself in anything substantial. Hope. A voice called quietly. She looked up and saw Beth, her white dress shining faintly in the moonlight. Beth smiled gently, but her eyes were filled with concern. "Are you okay? I watched you slip out." Hope mustered a grin, but it felt brittle. "Yeah, I needed some air. It's a lot in there." Beth sat next to her, taking care not to let her garment contact the floor. "Isn't it overwhelming? There is so much noise, and so many people. I almost forgot how to breathe during the vows." Hope nodded, relieved by Beth's attempt to lighten the tension. "You looked beautiful out there," she added, her voice softer than she intended. "You and Liam are perfect together," Beth smiled softly. "We aren't perfect. We're simply us. You know how much we quarrel about trivial matters, like who gets the last slice of pizza." Hope chuckled, a quiet, sincere sound that astonished her. "Yeah, but you always sort things out. That's what makes it work." Beth bent her head and studied her. "Are you thinking about him?" "Daniel." Hope's breath stopped. She hadn't spoken his name aloud in years, but Beth knew her too well. "Not just him," she confessed. "There's more of everything. I look at you and Liam and am so pleased for you, but it makes me feel like I miss my chance. Maybe I'm not built for this." Beth reached for her hand and gently squeezed it. "Hopefully you're not broken. You aren't missing anything. Love is not a race. It is not something you can win or lose. It's nasty and complicated, and it can take longer than you expect." Hope shook her head, her tears watering. What if it never happens? What if I'm always observing from the outside? Beth did not respond right away. She glanced at the stars, her expression contemplative. When I originally met Liam, I didn't expect him to see me as more than your bothersome friend. I was terrified to tell him how I felt. But one day I just did. And it wasn't flawless. We made many mistakes, but we continued trying. You don't need to have everything sorted out, Hope. You just have to keep turning up. Hope wanted to believe her, but the words seemed remote, as if they belonged to someone else's story. She thought about Daniel again, how he promised her forever and then walked away. She reflected on the years after, the peaceful nights alone, the dreams that had faded into shadows. I don't know how to do that anymore, she murmured. Beth gripped her hand again. You're doing it right now. You're here, even though it's difficult. That's it for today. They sat quietly for a while, the music from the reception wafting out to them. Hope felt the weight in her chest shift, not disappear, but become lighter, like a stone she could carry a bit longer. She wasn't ready to dance just yet, but she could stay. She could see her brother and best friend establish their lives together, and perhaps, just maybe, she would begin to feel there was still a place for her in the world. The night went on, and Hope remained on the patio, Beth beside her, their hands still linked. The stars overhead appeared brighter, and for the first time in years, Hope sensed a glimmer of possibility. Hope sat on the edge of the reception hall, her clothing too tight around her chest and her throat too dry to swallow. She had sworn herself she would not come, that watching Carter's wedding would be too much, but she had found herself here nonetheless, drawn like a moth to the silent burn of grief. The music throbbed gently through the air, a melody that should have been pleasant, but instead increased the hollow between her ribs. Everyone's eyes seemed to sparkle that night, whether from champagne or love. Carter stood in the heart of it all, his wife glowing alongside him, her veil pulled back to show a smile that reflected the light like a mirror. Hope believed she would break just by gazing at them. She'd known him before the vows, the white dresses, and everything felt permanent. There was a moment when she believed he would select her, but that was past. The clinking of drinks resonated as guests encouraged the newlyweds to kiss. Hope turned her head away. She couldn't watch. The air was oppressive, thick with congratulations, laughing, and the clack of silverware against porcelain. It wasn't her place anymore, and it had never truly been hers. She stood abruptly, her chair skidding across the floor, catching the attention of an older aunt, who swiftly returned to her meal. Hope left the hall with tense shoulders, pushing her steps to be steady. Outside, the night was calm and kind. The moon cast silver light on the lawn, contrasting with the blackness. She walked until she could no longer hear the laughter coming from the open doors. She should have gone home, gotten into bed, and pushed her face against her pillow until morning. But instead, she strolled to the far side of the estate, where a smaller crowd had gathered behind string lights. That was where she discovered Liam and Beth. They weren't married yet they danced as if they had been together forever. Beth's hair spun like molten copper under the light, and her hand rested in Liam's with an unspoken trust. They swayed to the music, which was very different from the song Carter and his bride were moving to inside. This song was slower and deeper, drawing Hope in without her permission. Beth spotted her first, and her lips curled into a smile. "Hope," she replied quietly, holding out a hand. "Come dance with us." Hope shook her head, but Beth's grin was too kind to pass up. Liam, always the stable one, extended his hand as well. "Just for a song," he explained, his voice warm and confident. So Hope stepped forward, caught between and by them, one hand in Beth's and the other in Liam's. They danced slowly, the three of them circling in a quiet spot where laughter was not heard and the music faded into something more private. Hope felt the pressure of their palms and the sturdiness of their hug, and for the first time in the night, she allowed her body to rest. But with each turn and sway, the anguish inside her grew. She didn't want to steal what they had. She'd learned long ago that love cannot be stolen. It was only a reminder that love thrived so intensely around her, while her own heart remained attached to someone who had never chosen her.
Her eyes sting.
She tried to blink away her tears, but Beth saw. "You're hurting," Beth said quietly, not as a question, but as the fact. Hope nodded once, sharply and silently. She couldn't speak. Liam clasped her hand to ground her. "Then let yourself feel it," he said softly. "Do not fight it here." "Not with us," Hope sobbed, her tears falling on the grass as they turned in circles beneath the hanging lights. Beth gripped her harder, placing her head into Hope's temple as Liam steadied their feet. They did not ask any questions. They did not attempt to repair what could not be fixed. They simply held her in the rhythm, allowing her anguish to spill out gently into the night. The music swelled, the world dimmed, and Hope felt suspended between two realities. The one where Carter had chosen her, where their laughter filled the air, and tonight could have been her wedding, and the one she was actually standing in, clutching borrowed warmth while the man she once loved danced with someone else inside. When the song finished, Beth kissed her cheek, soft as a benediction. "You're not alone," she continued, her voice filled with confidence. Liam nodded, his gaze fixed on Hope's face. "Not ever, if you don't want to be." Hope attempted to smile, but her lips shook instead. She stepped back, softly releasing their hands. The night pushed down on her with its silence, but she realized it wasn't suffocating any longer. Yes, it was heavy, but it was genuine, and she was capable of carrying it. She did not return to the reception hall. She couldn't tolerate the sight of Carter anymore. Instead, she went around the gardens until the noises of celebration faded, leaving only her and the quiet murmur of crickets. She sat on a stone bench with her eyes closed, listening to her own heartbeat. It hurt, but it also reminded her that she was still alive, capable of feeling, and capable of loving again, even if it seemed impossible now. She did not keep track of how much time passed. Perhaps an hour or more passed before the lights inside dimmed and voices flowed out as visitors began to leave. She stayed hidden, watching the shadows move over the lawn. Carter's laughter faded into the night, blending with his bride's voice. Hope pushed her hand on her chest and whispered goodbye into the darkness. It wasn't the dramatic ending of a film or a novel. It was quieter and heavier, like a stone dropped in deep water. She wasn't sure if he'd ever hear it, but she needed to say it anyhow. When she finally stood, her legs stiff, she proceeded to the edge of the property, where her car was waiting. The trip was long and dark, yet the emptiness provided a weird comfort. She remembered Beth's words, Liam's palm steady against hers, and, while the ache did not go away, it did shift, just enough to allow her to take another step forward. Love was something she couldn't keep tonight. However, she was appreciative for the unexpected, compassionate, and genuine friendship she had received. Nonetheless, as she drove into the night, the memory of Carter's smile lingered like a ghost, haunting and beautiful. She carried it with her, knowing it might never depart, but also knowing she could handle its weight. Maybe one day she'll put it down totally. The stars above blinked quietly, and Hope muttered her name into the silence, as if to remind herself who she was without him. A name that is not dependent on anyone else's choice, but one that she can truly own. Even though her heart pained, it beat steadily and stubbornly against the night.